Guys, we are in Prague right now for New Year's. Sorry that the content's taken so long to turn around, but yes, it is New Year's, so I am pretty drunk right now. We'll see how it goes though. So long story short, guys, we were playing Hold'em, played really well. We're up £300 one point, but then we started switching to playing bomb pots. I have pretty much no clue about the strategy for bomb pots, and yeah, ended up torching €400. Can't believe it, man. I'm so gutted. Walking back, I am so gutted. But this is why you don't play games that you have no clue about. We move.
So we took a €400 hit in Prague. Double board bomb pots got us, but no excuses. We are charging it to the bankroll challenge. Should have pulled the plug when the game switched. Anyway, time to lock in for today's session at Asper's London Stratford. Having barely sat down, we see we've got ace king of hearts, and now I'm fumbling to get the camera set up properly. One limper before us, I raised to 12, cut off calls, original limper calls, 3 ways to king 9-4 rainbow. Great start to the session. I have top pair, top kicker, a check-in flow to the cutoff, who bets a hefty 35 into 39. Low jack folds. I feel like raising his large bet here might just scare him away on such a dry flop or isolate stronger hands. So I just proceed with a call. Turn is a safe looking 6 of hearts. I check again, and now he bets 70 into 109. I just call again, leaving the SBR to be around 1 on the river, which comes a board pair in 9 of diamonds. I think his range here is pretty much just King X that we beat, or he's got pocket 4s or quads that we lose to. So for that reason, I contemplate making a donk, as I think he's just always checking back worse King X, and at the same time, I can't find many bluffs in his range that he takes this line with. So I do donk, but for 50% pot, which is just far too greedy, and after about 20 seconds, he does fold. I do wish I sized down, but better poker players than myself tell me a check is still best here, so probably just a mistake to donk altogether. But let me know what you think. We move on though with a nice cushion to kick off this session. 30 minutes go by without a significant hand, but the straddle is now on. It folds round to the button, who raises to £11, and I bump it up to £40 as we look down at pocket aces. Only the button makes the call, and we go heads up. Let's go. Flop comes 10-4-7, 2 hearts. It's pretty wet. I decide to check out a position, and he checks back. King of clubs on the turn is a good one for our range, and we also unblock it, so I'm just hoping he has a hand like king queen, king jack, maybe even ace king if we are lucky. So I bet 75 into 87, and after 45 seconds in the tank, he looks very suspicious. I ends up letting it go.
I don't think he has it. Ace high. Am I right?
We move on, knowing our image on this table is beginning to look loose. Alright, next up, we face a sea of limpers before the action is on us in the small blind with pocket 8s. So I pump it up to £22, hoping to isolate or take it down. Only the same player from the last hand, who didn't believe we had anything on the turn, makes the call. Flop comes ace 10, 6, 2 hearts. So not the best flop, demoted to third pair here. I just check, and happy to see it check back, so maybe we are good. But the turn is the queen of spades, demoting us further, but he checks back once again. The river is the best in the deck now with the 8 of spades. So given our little history with this opponent and our perceived table image, I feel it's a prime opportunity to go and take advantage of that with their big bet to look bluffy once again. I bet 75 into 52, and he does think about this for about 30 seconds, once again looking suspicious, but does again lay it down correctly. Maybe my bet was slightly too greedy there, but at least it helps continue to build this bluffy image of ours.
You didn't have anything, huh? You didn't have anything.
And just 3 minutes later, we pick up pocket aces on the button. One limper before us. I raise it up to 12. Small blind folds, but big blind, who we are 250 big blinds effective with, now re-raises to 37 quid. And action is back on us, so especially given our perceived table image right now, this is going to be a 4-bet 1,000,000% of the time. I do a bit of Hollywooding before going to £112, and if you think he's going to jam on us now for 250 big blinds deep because of our loose image, well, you would be correct. We of course snap and let him know he's facing aces. Here's what happens next.
Twice. Let's go twice.
Twice on 7.
Good luck, guys.
Oh my god, why did I go twice?
Queen. Words.
Quads.
You get some points.
Many doors left.
Aces. Aces.
I will get some.
Oh, I'm
Quads.
आसान. 1500 मिलेगा 1500.
So we don't have the footage for this next significant hand, but here's how it went. In the small blind with 7-5 of hearts, we go 4 ways in a limped pot to a flop, which comes 5-5-3 rainbow. It checks through to the queen of diamonds on the turn, bringing in a flush draw. Now I lead for half pot. I think I'd prefer a check raise strategy, but anyway, only the button, who's the same player from the first 2 hands in the vlog, makes the call. River is a clean 8 of hearts, so I pretty much think we are good here 100% of the time, especially versus the button when he checks back flop. Targeting his queen X now, I size up again to look bluffy versus the same opponent with a bet of 50 into 28. He makes the call, let's go, but then stuns me when he shows 10-5 of clubs to take this pot down himself. Nice hand, we move. In the hijack next, with 1 limper from our direct right, I raise to 12 with ace queen off and the button and limper call. We go to a decent jack 10-2 rainbow flop, checks to me with a player left to act. I check and he checks back. Turn is the best card in their deck, completing the rainbow. Now when it checks to me, I think both are pretty capped, so I just bet small, and when only the button just decides to call, I think it's going to be tough to get much more value on the river, especially with the brickiest of bricks in the 3 of diamonds. That being said though, we have the nuts, so I decide to bet pot. Maybe he won't believe us, but no, he snap folds, and maybe I did get too greedy once again, knowing he is capped, but we move. On to ace 9 of hearts next. 1 limper before us. I ISO raise it to 12, big blind and the limper call. 3 ways to queen 6-10, 2 hearts. When it checks to me, I don't mind checking back here with our ace high, but we are quite deep and have potential to make a very nutted hand. So I c-bet small to try build a pot, and now big blind raises to 70 quid. Cut off now calls, and we are getting the odds to call, so that's what we do. Now onto the turn. 1 time please, dealer. It is the 6 of hearts, so we make our flush, but the board is paired, and now guys, big blind goes all in. About 30 seconds later, cut off just calls, leaving himself with 120 more behind. So the question is, do we go all in or fold?
Let's party.
So we ended up calling, we flip over our hands before the river to find out we are dead. Big blind shows pocket 10s, which was exactly what I feared, and cutoff shocks me when he shows queen 6 of spades. Really thought here, at least if we are wrong about big blind, we should at least win the 120 quid off cutoff, but not even that. This one was a lesson learnt the hard way. I do think, in retrospect, it is a blunder because big blind simply only has pocket 10s or 6s here, unless a very wild player. But to be honest, we didn't even think he was that. So we move on with the mission for the rest of the session being to get out of the hole now. Straddle on, we look down at 8-7 of spades in the low jack, opening a little wider than usual here, trying to get out the hole. We get calls from the button, who's our pal, who plays professionally, and the small blind calls as well. Flop comes pretty good for us. Ace queen 6 2 spades. Checks to me, and I elect to bet my range here. Only the pro on the button calls, and the turn is a gift in the jack of spades, completing our flush. But worse for our perceived range and better for our opponent's range, who will think in terms of ranges as a pro. So I decide to slow down and check, hoping to face a bet from him, but unfortunately decides to check back, and the river is the 9 of clubs, which I don't think changes an awful lot. Question now is, how do we get the most value? I think if I check or block, our opponent is capable of bluffing. I decide to just check, and our opponent only bets 35, and I just call and not reopen the action, which is very questionable. Of course, we're good, but I do think in hindsight the block bet to induce would have been the better play out of the two. But looking back, perhaps an even better play is to just bet big. But we move and learn from this badly played hand. Pocket kings next. First to act with the straddle on I raise to 15, and we go a dreaded 5 ways. Flop comes 9-9-3 rainbow, so we fade that ace, but when action checks to me with 2 players in position to us, I check it over to them and it checks back. Turn brings the 8 of spades and a few draws with it, so when it checks to us for a second time, I bet 20 into 77. Extra small bet since not even a flush draw on board, and only the small blind makes the call. 6 of clubs on the river. He checks, so definitely think another bet is in order. I bet half pot, and unfortunately he folds. Queen jack off in the big blind. Small blind squeezes a limper in the field to 8. I make the call and limper calls. Flop comes 8. Double ace rainbow. Action checks through to a 9 of clubs on the turn. Pre-flop raiser checks again, so I think both players are capped now, and I decide to bet 7 to pump on a brick river. Glad to see that only the small blind calls, and on the jack of diamonds river, we've most probably just made the best hand now, but I think he's going to overfold to a bet anyway. I probably should still bet here. Anyway, I just check back and we are good. Action folds to the cutoff, who limps, and yes, 9-3 suited on the button.
What the heck?
We are getting after it irresponsibly. I raise to 12, trying to isolate the capped range in the cutoff, but it doesn't quite go as planned when the big blind calls as well. The flop comes 5-6-2, 1 club. Even though not quite our board here, we do have some potential. So I see bet small, and both players just make the call. 7 of diamonds on the turn makes us open-ended, but it's not a great card for our range. I'm not in the mood to slow down though. So I bet 35 into 70, which does not get the job done, as big blind sticks around, who is the same opponent from the queens versus aces hand early in the session. River is a brick in the 2 of diamonds, and now we see our opponent lead out 75 into 140, and I snap fold, wishing I actually fought over this spot on the river a little more, especially after our opponent owns us when he shows jack 8 of hearts. Fair play, man, nice hand. But one thing the board pairing 2 does do is counterfeit any slow play 2 pairs. It also makes sets less likely, but also they probably raise turn or flop. We also block 9-8, 4-3. Maybe I'm reaching or just being results orientated though, but is a raise to rep and overpair a terrible idea? I wish I at least entertained it on the river, especially if I'm going to go so out of line to start with. Anyway, obviously not a great hand here. We move. Pocket 7s next. Straddle on I raise to 15. We get calls from the button, small blind and straddler. 4 ways to 6-3-8 rainbow. Small blind leads out now 20 into 80. I make a reluctant call for that price. Button calls too, and I feel like I'm behind to an 8. Turn is the queen of clubs. Small blind now checks, which is interesting with all the draws out there. I do feel like this is pretty capped to 8x, so I bet 30% pot, which may be a little too small here, but if small blind does just make the call, I think a big bet on the river would be a credible bluff. So thankfully button is out of the way, which is the first thing that needed to happen, and the small blind does just make the call. Go into the river, which is another 8, and now small blind blocks with all the 8x I think he has. I just don't see this bluff I had planned working out anymore, so I do decide to let this one go. I'm really trying to get after it to get out of this hole. This hand probably didn't need to be played this aggressively with the showdown it had, but we move. So as you can see, we only captured the showdown for this hand. We go 3 ways in a limped pot with 6 deuce off to double deuce ace 2 spades. Checks through on the flop. Small blind now bets pot, so I just call. Button raises to 10. Small blind calls, and I just make the call. King of diamonds on the river is beautiful. Checks to me. I check it over to the button in hope he has an ace, who bets 15. So after small blind gets out of the way, I pump it up to 75. He goes all in over the top for £85 more, and I take some time to think about it and then realize I'm being a nit and call and cooler our opponent who had ace 8 off. Unfortunate for him, but let's go. Picking up pocket threes now for the second significant hand on this new table. Our ISO raised the hijack limper, but mission fails as we end up going 4 ways to jack ace 4 rainbow. So we are pretty much done with this hand. 4 ways. Action checks through though, only for the best card in the deck to appear on the turn. Yes, the 3 of diamonds. So our hopes have been revived. I bet 16 into 49, which is far too small for my liking, I think, but we get lucky that everyone had nothing at all despite all the draws out there, as only the button ends up calling, and we go to a pretty brick river in the 6 of hearts. Do I think button is pretty capped to a pair of jack X or below? Yes, so I don't get too greedy here for that reason and bet just over half pot. After giving it some thought, he does pay us off, and of course we take it down as we slowly begin to make our way out of the hole. Next up, our first premium hand in a while as we look down at queens. Only the small blind calls, and we go heads up with 100 big blinds effective to 6, 3, 9, 2 hearts. I just bet small and he calls. Turn once again gives us a set. Better yet, we fade the flush completing. When he checks to me, I bet 2/3 pot and he just makes the call. River is a brick 4 of spades. He checks it over again, and here I'm thinking to target 10s, jacks, and 9x. I decided to just bet really small for a crying call, and maybe I could go larger though, especially after these snap calls. In retrospect, I just think when so many draws have missed on the river, we can just go larger because they'll give us less credit for having a hand. And so taking advantage of that is something I definitely need to look into in the future. Folds to us in the cutoff next. I open to 8 as we peel pocket aces. Let's go. Button and small blind call. Flop comes as dry as you like. 6, 10 deuce rainbow. Checks to us. In our position, I do check it over and the button bets just under half pot. Some info I have on the button is that he is on the tighter passive side. Anyway, I call and we are heads up to the 3 of clubs. It is pretty inconsequential, I think, and now my opponent only bets 20 into 50, so time to raise this one up. I go to £55 and he just makes the call. The river is now complete overkill with the ace of diamonds. However, we will have all 3 combos of ace 10, so maybe for once I should just go for a big size here. At the same time, he might just not believe us and fancies a hero call, although I doubt it. There's only one way to find out. So I bet around pot and he goes into the tank. 30 seconds go by, then a minute. After another 30 seconds in the tank, he does make the call and sure enough, shows ace 10. We get super lucky at the end of our session, managing to climb out the hole after 8 hours of badly played poker. We play a few more hands after this before calling it a night.
Oh, ace 10. Just don't get my face in it. I won't.
So we ended up running really well towards the end there and actually getting out of it, but the game is all about decisions, can't be results orientated, and I don't think we made the best decisions there. It is a very tough fold, but a disciplined one at that, one that we should have made if we want to be a profitable poker player. Gonna have to find it in the future, guys. Embrace the struggle, the pain, but yeah, we just move forward, learn from it. And it's 4:30 right now. Any later and I'm gonna be falling asleep on the steering wheel. Time to get home, guys. I'll see you in the next one, and I appreciate every single one of you.